God was listening to a little child and to a
Yeah,
little child's faith.
that's awesome. Yeah, it makes me think about the whole concept that Jesus, that the entire world was created through him, and it tells us that in the beginning of Colossians. And so it would make sense that if we appeal to him who created it all through his hands, the New Testament tells us, then of course he can wave his hands and change the weather in one particular locale without too much trouble. And I think that's a fairly common miracle, people praying for the change of weather. I've heard it said that farmers, more than anyone, have more faith because they are completely dependent on the weather for the success of
Mhm.
their crops. So there are a lot of farmers who have learned how to pray and how to speak to the weather.
Yeah, let me read in out of Job 37:14 through 16. Listen to this, Job, and consider God's wonders. Do you know how God controls the clouds and makes his lightning flash? Do you know how the clouds hang poised? Those
Hmm.
wonders of him who has perfect knowledge. You and I were on a plane just recently coming back from North Carolina. We are coming back into Denver, and we were coming in and out of clouds. It was just phenomenal to me to think that that we could actually go through clouds, and how God had created um, this beautiful nature for us to experience.
Yeah.
You get the sense of God's awesomeness, His presence, His delight, His love, His power, because He can, like a restrained or constrained power,
Mhm.
because those clouds could can do a lot of damage. But
Mhm.
instead, we were just going we right through them, and we landed just without any incident. Speaking of North Carolina, oh my gosh, the mountains were different. They're greener. They have more forest, and of course, there were small. Uh, Everybody thinks they're baby bears, but they're really just small bears at a full size.
Yeah.
And I loved it because we walked all the way through that, and just rejoicing in the Lord that we could be at the National Vineyard Conference. And one of the evenings, or I should say, one of the mornings, the Hispanic Association led worship, and um, Tina Colon Williams, the worship leader of the moment, she led a song called Montaña, and it was Muévete, speak to the mountains, move. If the Lord, basically, if the Lord says, speak to the mountains, move, then they will move. And
Muévete, muévete.
Muévete.
That
Yeah.
reminds me. You were helping administrate a couple of events for the Hispanic Association, and we had an outdoor event. And there was a fair amount of rain that week. In fact, I remember the last day of the conference, the rain was so heavy that it was sheets of rain for a good hour, and you couldn't be outside. But the day before that, we had you'd organized an outdoor event for the Hispanic Association, Hispanic Vineyard pastors and leaders, and we had perfect weather that night. So I have a
Yeah,
I have a
well, we
feeling you were
prayed. We
praying.
were praying.
Yeah.
And another moment too is when we had a 20th anniversary.
Oh
We had
yeah,
4 days out
down in Canyon City.
yeah, down in Canyon City. It was in a park um, between Florence and Canyon City. The rains were
Yeah,
coming down the mountain. They were coming, and we prayed and prayed. And what we saw was the split
yeah.
and it came around the event and then met back over Florence and went on. It was,
Yeah.
it
I,
was
I remember
such
that
a
because
display of God's glory.
the opening where the rain went around us was also, it had sort of an unusual glow to it. Like it wasn't just the clearing. It was still, there were still clouds there, but it just seemed to, we felt like we were under a dome of God's grace and protection. So
Yeah. Let me read out of Psalms 95, 1 through 7. Come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us sing aloud to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before him with thanksgiving and extol him with music and song. For the Lord is the great God, the great King above all gods. In his hand are the depths of the earth, and the mountain peaks belong to him. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. Come, Let us bow down and worship. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, the flock under his care.
I think that's almost a universal response. So people begin to worship, even if they don't know what they're worshiping. They just, their hearts express worship, giving themselves, acknowledging, honoring, recognizing the creator of the universe. And then they have, what do I do with that? I love the idea of people who maybe are even confirmed atheists or who have decided they're not going to embrace any particular religion. And yet this happens to them. And they have to decide what to do with this worship welling up within them. What do I do with that?
Well, there's this man that lived a long time ago. His name's Ignatius of Loyola. He had a key conversion when he stopped alongside banks of the river Cardonere, and he listened and he heard God, and God gave him this profound understanding that God is not just in churches; He is
Mm.
all around.
Ignatius was a soldier, right? And he had given his life to fighting. And I think he was wounded. And then he had a conversion, seeing God in nature. What I like about that story is, of course, he founded the Jesuits, Catholic order. And those guys would travel all over the world, bringing the gospel to different peoples. They were fairly controversial, even within the Catholic Church. Eventually, that order, I think, was shut down. But I always love the Jesuits because they're these totally diehard, tough people who are unafraid to hop on a boat and go all the way to Japan or go all the way to the Americas and go up the coast of the Californias and found these missions. And it seems like these Jesuits were also nature lovers. They were these almost like the Marines of Christianity. We'll go anywhere, we'll do anything, and we're unafraid. We'll risk our lives.